So, hi, I'm Laura Templeton, brand communications consultant at 30 Second Success, professional speaker, author of the book 30 Second Success, Ditch the Pitch and Start Connecting, and the chapter president of Virtual Networkers, an organization of heart centered entrepreneurial women who love and support one another in growth and the journey of business.
And I'm Suzanne Tregenza Moore, marketing and business coach at SuzanneTMoore.com, host of the All Things Authorpreneur podcast, author of Hang On Tight, Learn to Love the Roller Coaster of Entrepreneurship, and a longtime member of Virtual Networkers. Laura and I met through this fabulous women's group, and many of our members have become authors in the time we've been connecting. So when we saw a book giveaway done by some others, we decided we had to do the same to highlight our Virtual Networkers sisters. So we're giving away a bunch of book bundles in two categories. One is all about self-help and personal growth, and the other is about business and entrepreneurship. To be eligible to win, you just have to hop on over to decembergiveaway.com and enter your information there before the end of December 12th. And everyone who enters will be eligible for free gifts that each of the authors will be sharing about. So it's a win-win for everyone. And now you get to meet one of our authors.
And it is my pleasure to introduce Debbie KEY-vin, who happens to be my publisher and the person who invited me to Virtual Networkers. I'm going to read Debbie's bio from the back of her book. Yep, this is her book cover. See it here? There you go. So Deborah Kevin is the founder and chief inspiration officer of Highlander Press. She's a full-time editor and the publisher who lives in Baltimore, Maryland with her family and a spunky pup named Fergus. She's helped dozens of authors and entrepreneurs add the title best-selling author to their list of accomplishments. Currently, she's pursuing a master's degree in publishing from what actually you got your master's degree, didn't you?
I did.
And this is her first of many nonfiction books. So welcome, Debbie. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Oh my gosh, it's such a pleasure to be with two of my favorite people and also best-selling authors, both published with Highlander Press. And
Absolutely.
Laura, you were the first.
I know, that's so exciting.
Yeah.
So Debbie, we're going to keep the focus on you, not us today. And we want to know who your book was written for.
Oh, yeah, it's such a good question. So one of the things that I realized in talking with some of our virtual networkers, now authors, or just people who are interested in publishing a book, was that they didn't really understand that there are three main ways that they can publish. And one of the things is working with a publisher, traditional publisher, Penguin, Random House, Simon & Schuster. And then there's also the mid-range. But a lot of people want to self-publish their books, and that's a great avenue for so many people, and I'm a big fan. So my book was actually written for the entrepreneur who wants to self-publish her book, and giving her the background of what things to ask, what things to think about, and how she can leverage her work to be a bestseller as well on Amazon.
So Debbie, that leads me to another question, and that is really one of those. Obviously, we want to know more about your book and how it helps people, but the biggest thing, just kind of explain how it's opened up the world for a lot of people who thought they'd never be able to be an author.
I love that question, because here's the thing. Back when self-publishing came onto the scene, probably about 10 years ago, a lot of people who were frustrated by the traditional method just rushed forward and published their books. And they did themselves a disservice in many ways, because what ends up happening is they think, I've written my book and now I just have to publish it. They don't realize that there are really 5 main categories of what you do with a book before, during, and after its publication. And so they focus just on the writing piece, and then they self-published. And what ended up happening was there was a lot of garbage out there. There were a lot of shitty first drafts that had a homemade cover designed, and it gave their books, the self-publishing, a really negative connotation and a really negative reputation, which is unfortunate, because self-publishing just means that if you do all of the steps, you actually own 100% of the risk, but you also get 100% of the reward. You're not sharing it with anybody. And so my book was written specifically to help people who want to self-publish but don't really know the ins and outs. Now, it's not going to tell them what buttons to push on Amazon KDP, but it's going to talk about the things to think about and how to put their book in the best light to make the impact that they really want to make.
Yeah, I think your book does a really good job of highlighting for people who don't know what they don't know, those things that they need to figure out before they move forward with their book, which is a real service. And I know that you wrote it thoroughly to be of service. So I also know, so people are going to have the opportunity to win your book.
Yes.
But I know that everyone who enters our book Bonanza is going to have the opportunity to download a free gift from you, which they'll get all the details for when they go to decemberbonanza.com. But what is the free gift that you're going to be offering to them? Yeah, it's you had shared it with me earlier.
Right.
And I believe it is about what you need to know before selecting an editor.
Yes. So I love the two areas that I feel like most people who self-publish really sell themselves short because they don't invest in a professionally designed cover, which, as we all know, especially since COVID, everybody's shopping on these little thumbnails. And so the idea that you want a really great cover to stop the scroll, have a really great description of your book and who it's for is what causes them to push the publish button. But the other piece that people often overlook is finding a really good editor that's aligned with their energy, because there's all different kinds of editing, but really finding the right editor for each person is crucial. And so that's what that gift is intended for, is like, here are the questions to think about. How would you answer them? And then when you're interviewing editors, what things do you need to ask them to see if they're aligned? I know that here at Highlander Press, one of the things that we do is we invite people to submit 10 pages plus a summary plus some other ancillary pieces, where we then read it and we provide free feedback on those 10 pages. And we do that for a couple of reasons. The first is it allows me to see exactly where the story is in terms of editing. Does it really need developmental editing? Does it need more zhuzhing up in the structure of the book before we get into the copy editing piece, versus the proofreading is something so well written that all we really need to do is lay it out. But the second piece of that is to see how the author receives the editorial feedback, and then that conversation to see if they're aligned with our energy, as well as do they feel like we're aligned with theirs. Because that's the biggest piece of an editor's role, is making sure that the author's voice is crystal clear and as polished and as good a representation of them as it possibly can be. And so finding that person who'll be all up in your business and who you trust and you feel confident and comfortable with, because that's really crucial for someone who's self-publishing. Is you can't give yourself a good haircut and you can't edit your own work. I am a historical fiction writer and I don't edit my own work. I mean, I do some editing, but I do hire a professional editor.
Absolutely. And I have to say, Laura, I'm guessing you probably feel the same, but having been through the book writing and editing process, I learned so much about what different kinds of editors do. And I mean, I think before I was involved in writing a book, I just thought an editor was someone who was going to make sure that like my grammar was okay and that I didn't have typos. And really, there's so much more to it. And I know that my book turned out so much better because of the involvement of you, Debbie, as my developmental editor. And, someone else might not be aligned with you personally, but they should have a developmental editor. Do you think so, Laura?
I absolutely agree. I think one of the best things that I ever could have done was to work with Debbie as my editor, because she got me to the point where the self-critic in me was taking over, and she finally said to me, "Okay, it's good. It's good enough. It's time for the world to see this work." And having her there, and I always say she just kind of like held my hand through the whole process, and it was amazing, an amazing experience to go through. And I absolutely encourage people to do the same thing. Make sure that you have someone on your side so that you're putting your best foot forward. And just being able to go through that process has been a beautiful experience. And Debbie, talking about that experience, you shared with Suzanne and I that you're actually in a process of turning this into 3 books, like a trilogy.
Yes. Yes, it's
Let's talk about
interesting.
that, and talk a little bit about how Virtual Networkers has had an impact on that transition.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, so it's interesting because it's such a short book that you're thinking, what, she's breaking that down into 3 books? I'm actually expanding and breaking it down. So we're going to have a you want to write your book, now what? So really it's for people who are at that beginning stage, and it will help guide some of that developmental editing through that. Like, how do you define what your book is, who it's for, what do you need to know based upon the impact that you want to make. If you're writing a thought leader book, what does that look like versus, a middle grade fiction book? There are different ways to develop different books. And so that will be the first book. The second book will be you've written your book, now what, which will be much more expanded to include things like processing and how you can lay things out, how to may include additional information in that book about hiring an editor and the different kinds of editing. And then the third book is called You've Published Your Book, Now What? And it will leverage a lot of the work that we do with Suzanne already in the launching and then the post production marketing, because as you know, having had your book published, Laura, in 2020 and you, Suzanne, in 2021, you know that you don't want to be an asshole asking people to buy your book, but your book can be a foundation for getting speaking opportunities, for really getting clear about what you provide and what services. You can leverage your book into programs, into courses, and into all kinds of other social media posts. There's so many ways that you can just bring the awareness of your expertise, and your book is a great place to do that. How did virtual networkers impact all of this? I was actually the first person to sign up for virtual networkers. I'm like number one. And I joined the first time that I even heard about it. So it was the beginning of 2018. So I'm a longtime fan, longtime member. I love virtual networkers. Not only did both of you help me get my 30-second message clear, get me clear on the value that we bring through the process of holding people's hands through the entire thing, but I've actually guided a great many of our members to becoming best-selling authors, working with Suzanne to do their launches, working with, you both come and teach at our cohort meetings about 30-second messages and launches and so on and so forth. And so it's a symbiotic relationship. I've found that people who've gone through the process then refer people that they hear go through the process because it's such a positive thing. And to me, there's no better thank you and no better feel good than when one of my virtual networker sisters, who's author comes and says, hey, you should work with Highlander Press. So it's a little bit of both, right? Giving and taking, and then referencing, referring people to each of you for what you bring to the table as well.
Well, Debbie, thank you so much. It's been a delight just chatting with you about your book. I'm excited about you being part of the Book Bonanza. Thank you again for being here with us today.
Well, thank you for having me, and it's been a pleasure.
And I just want to remind everyone that if you want the opportunity to win Debbie's book and several others, you've got to enter the Book Bonanza at DecemberBonanza.com before the end of the day on December 12th.